This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League GT4 PRO Cup America Series is brought to you by Malwa Transport, oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec. Visit their website on www.malwa-transport.ca. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to TRTM for tonight's coverage of Season 4, Round 3 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 PRO Cup America Series. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us here in Midrand, South Africa, on our first triple sprint of the season right here at the Grand Prix circuit Kyalami. Founded in 1961 and comprised of 16 turns and 2.8 miles of FIA Grade 2 tarmac, the former home of the South African Grand Prix serves as our first triple sprint event of the season here on what is a brand new 12-round calendar. In the modern day, it sees one major event per year, the Kyalami 9 Hours, that has ran since the track's opening year back in 1961. A wonderfully varied circuit that has given us quite a fair deal of exciting racing, whether through standard sprint races or endurance racing. Kyalami is a versatile venue, revered for its place in the GT community. Taking a look onto the calendar, of course, finds us only a smidge through the championship here, about a quarter of the way through, before heading back in towards Europe for 3 more rounds at the Nürburgring, Red Bull Ring and the Circuit Zolder. It's going to be an exciting run here tonight in Kyalami. The first triple sprint event, of course, as mentioned there, now 3 times at the start of this broadcast, and really, it does come in threes today. Taking a look in towards the regulations, of course, we'll see us into the, that's the team's championship. We'll see us in towards 10 minutes of free practice at the moment. Coming up around the corner will be 30 minutes of qualifying, following on there from after our 3 30-minute races in quick succession. The staggered qualifying still in force for today's event, with the first 10 minutes over to the AMs, the middle 10 to the semi-pros, and the last 10 over to the pros. No mandatory pit stops for any of the 3 races in effect for today's event. Taking a look then over the last couple of rounds of the championship, in our Spanish doubleheader that kicked the season off saw wins in Valencia for Wishful Winnings, Isaac McMillan and Didier Potvin, whereas in Barcelona, the first of 2 races gave La Bay their first win of the season, with Chili Peppers collecting on their first semi-pro and Brandon Carr on their first semi-pro of the season. And then following on from that, La Bay and Carr went back-to-back for victories in race 2 in Barcelona on the first double sprint of the season. It was Adrian Zavala to collect on their first in the semi-pros at the end of round 2 of the championship. As far as that concerns the championship standings, taking a look into what we briefly showed off there was the team's championship after round 2, to find that Malwa Racing has now lost the lead in 2 of 3 categories. Taking a look at their current leading category though, which is the pros, they lead over Team 16 by 90 points. Milk Crate Racing in third with 38 points, 161 Motorsports with 37 points, and G-Force with 33. In semi-pro, this has been the first of the major blows to Malwa Racing's otherwise triple dominance of the championship in teams, as they've lost out to Breaking Point Racing on both semi-pro and AM. Breaking Point Racing leading by 8 points over Malwa Racing, 100 points to their 92, with Ford Curva in third in semi-pro, Florida Engineering in fourth, and 161 Motorsports in fifth. In the AM category, Breaking Point also lead there ahead of Malwa Racing, with Team Raceline Sim in third, Let's Racemate in fourth, and Florida Engineering round out the top 5. Taking a look then across back in towards the session, as we now discuss the Drivers' Championship standings. We were watching on board here with Brandon David, now back in the pit lanes. We catch on board with Adrian Zavala in the number 46 Mercedes. And taking a look into the Drivers' Championship standings, starting things off in Pro. Christian LeBay now leads the championship over Brandon David in second, with Vincent Simard marking third place. Wishful Winnings in fourth, and George Todd rounds out the top 5 in the Pro category with only 49 points, currently standing 7 points away from Wishful Winnings, who won the first round of the championship. Clinton Bourne makes 6th place ahead of Dylan Vaccaray in a joint 7th, with the car behind that being Carl Martel in the number 99 Chevrolet. Both of them with 37 points. They're ahead of David Tangway in 9th place, rounding out the top 10. In the pro standings is Justin Benton with 33 points. Taking a look in towards the semi-pro standings to find Adam Jeffrey and Ruben Pereira in a joint lead of the semi-pro division. Behind them, Joey Fisher in third. A joint 4th behind them between McMillan and Zavala find 54 points either side of which to round out that top 5 in what is currently a joint 1st and 4th. In 6th place behind them, Aidan Christie by a single point away with 53 points, I should say there. Chili Peppers in 7th with Ivan Sanchez in 8th place. 9th place for Andrew Veldkamp with 33 points, rounding out the top 10. In the semi-pros, we find that of the Jackal, only 2 points away then from 9th. Taking a look then in towards the AM categories, I should say here, with Didier Potvin leading the charge over Cedric Grenier-Massey by only 2 points worth noting, and the top 3 all divided by 4 points there, with Brandon Carr in third place. Curtis Belbray in 4th, up and ahead of Matthew Shinosky, who rounds out the top 5 with 55 points. Karina Stinson behind them by 5 points away in 6th with Maserati, 50 points. Up and ahead of Ray Risty of Team Raceline Aston Martin, 45 points strong in 7th. Casey Miles, his teammate, off by only 2 points away in 8th. Behind them, Adrian Mallow in 9th place. Rounding out the top 10, we find that here of Thomas Romano with Audi and Team Raceline. Taking a look back in towards the session here on board with Adrian Zavala at this time in the number 46 from the semi-pro category, and having a glance at balance of performance in the session, we'll find McLaren with the most advantage in today's session, 14 kilos shed away, but otherwise it will be Audi, Alpine, Maserati and Aston Martin losing weight for tonight's race. Chevrolet find themselves in a peculiar spot, net neutral on weight gain or loss. That can't be said for BMW, Porsche and Mercedes, all in the double figures, 10, 11 and 15 kilos added over factory weight for tonight's event. Taking a look onto the timing charts here in the trailing end of free practice finds Christian LeBay fastest, and it's a Malwar Racing 1, 2, 3 and 4 with Tanguay, Todd and Winnings behind. You see here at the time, the 120, Vincent Simard, currently 6th in free practice, chasing from behind that of George Todd, currently 3rd in the session. And it's worth noting just how fine some of the gaps are among this top 5. Having a glance here between George Todd and Wishful Winnings, the 2 Mercedes cars that flank a leading pack of Chevrolets over the front row. They find themselves separate as it stands by 35 thousandths of a second. Very, very thinly held margins there on the second row for the Mercedes cars. Behind them, another Mercedes, that being Adrian Zavala, leading the semi-pros in free practice. As far as the AMs are concerned, we find that of Didier Potvin leading the charge for Malwar Racing Aston Martin. We close in on the last 3 minutes of free practice, of course, to bring you back into the conversation surrounding the regulations ahead of us in today's event. 30 minutes, the first 10 minutes over to the AMs, the middle 10 minutes over towards the semi-pros, and the last 10 minutes to the pros in qualifying just around the corner, giving us ahead of us right now a collective 2 hours of on-track time after free practice from qualifying to the end of race 3. 3 times the winning opportunities, and we already saw that's given plenty over to the semi-pro category in Barcelona on the double sprint, so add an extra race into the mixture there, and we're surefire to find plenty more opportunities over the course of today's event for side-by-side action. So taking a look in with the AMs, the ones to keep an eye out for then will be the ones charging out headstrong in the AM section of qualifying. So Didier Potvin definitely looking on the cards here for a division pole position for Malwar Racing, looking to recuperate on some of their recent losses to Breaking Point Racing, and this has been quite a major blow for them. Of course, they headed in towards Barcelona last week, leading all 3 categories. That was the objective for Malwar Racing, was total world domination on this championship, and so far they hold the cards up in the Drivers' Championship and in the Pro Teams Championship, but they fall short in the other respects there. You see for Didier Potvin heading up towards the line. It is worth considering here, he's only 400ths away from Adam Jeffrey in 18th place. So even as far down here as 18th and 19th, we're finding those double-figure millisecond margins. Really not too much of a gap to be found between any one driver on this field, even as it could be said for up at the front row. As David Tanguay, only 175 thousandths, a tenth, 705 thousandths specifically away from the leading 119. But of course, we've seen this many a time from Christian LeBay. We don't get to see 100% of his overall pace in just free practice of all places. That would be too leading. That would give plenty of people an idea as to what to expect. He deliberately keeps his opponents in the dark and his teammates alike, not really showing us exactly what he can do with that Chevrolet until we get in towards qualifying. And as you've been watching on with us for any amount of time here in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, you'll know that among the 4 fastest drivers in the session, most of them are world record holders, or at least very close to world record holders in GT4 lap times on console ACC. So we are really looking at the creme de la crop of the top level of GT4 talent available to us here. And their preferred weapons of choice have been one of 2 machines distinctively in the last couple of months. It's been either the Chevrolet Camaro or the Mercedes-AMG GT4. And you can see it's emblematic how good these cars have been, because the top 15 are just simply that. It's either a Chevrolet or it's either a Mercedes. If it's neither of those 2, there's a pretty far cry it would ever be in the top 15 here in Kyalami. You can see the closest to them, Aston Martin's Brad Peacock, who I should point out here for Brad Peacock, he has lost a significant wad of points because he has transferred from, I believe he was with AMG in the last round, if I'm not mistaken, has moved to Aston Martins. That makes 2 of the Breaking Point Racing drivers to have done so. Before it was Brandon Carr moving to Alpine, and that was certainly quite an interesting choice indeed. Soviet Mario 911 in chat asking, you heard of any leagues running GT2s? I did, well, we did work with the Racing Club. Their EU division ran a championship called the GT Manufacturers Cup. It was a fantastic series we covered that ran the GT2s as well as older GT3s and Cup cars. But as far as leagues that routinely run the GT2s, I'm sorry to say that I'm coming up a bit short here for answers. But if you ever do run into one that's doing that, do let us know, because we are very enthusiastic to want to cover more GT2 content. We saw in the very brief time we had with the Racing Club was a fantastic outing in a very criminally underutilized category. We see much of the same here in GT4. It's somewhat of a holdout here in the GT4s in the Competizione Performance League, a very small pocket of the community condensed into a north of 20 car grid, as this is effectively now the gold standard for console GT4. We see Justin Benton making his way down to the line, among the last drivers to finish off free practice today before we get in towards 30 minutes of qualifying. Now, to reiterate how that works, it's going to be the first 10 minutes over to the AMs, then the middle 10 minutes over towards the semi-pros, as we just see there for Justin Benton, up to 11th for the end of free practice, and the last over to the pros. So as qualifying starts, we'll take a look on towards the bulletin board to see here. The first category admitted onto the track will be the AMs, so we'll go to catch on board here with the first out of the fray. And who else would it have been than the early bird to take the proverbial worm, Didier Potvin, the number 35, predicted at an AM pole position. And we looked in with him just towards the end of this free practice session. It was looking very, very confident for the Aston Martin. Now, taking a look on towards the overall qualifying predictions, this won't necessarily pertain much to the AM drivers, as it is primarily pros and then a sprinkling of semi-pros in that predicted top 10 at the moment. It shows Labay up at pole position, up over that of David Tanguay, but note the gap. Only 13 thousandths of a second. A driver that normally holds pole positions by seconds to half a second to multiple tenths of a second, this is quite remarkable to see that it's, I would say, a bit of an old Western gunslinger draw between himself and his teammate David Tanguay as to who really takes home pole position over the course of this event, working with a fraction of the time they've had in pre-event testing. Looking further down the line, Dylan Vecchio looking at third, with Wishful Winnings looking at a 4th place spot. Clinton Bourne to possibly round out the top 5. This is worth noting here. 2 of the semi-pro drivers find themselves among the mix. Adrian Zavala and Ruben Pereira, they stand 6th and 8th between them. Vincent Simard in a predicted 7th. Rounding out the top 10, Richard Cecil and Brandon David. It's going to be a rather curious take of things when we get to see the semi-pros and the pros come out to play, but the first of our drives around the track today will go to catch on board with the 35 of Didier Potvin, our track guide here at the Grand Prix circuit Kyalami. A wonderful circuit that I think does deserve the respect it garners historically speaking. It is a brilliant, brilliant venue, very well laid out, and it's provided for some fantastic racing. We've seen some proper stand-up performances in GT4 and GT3 at this track. So on board with Potvin, making our way up onto the opening straight for our tour of the Grand Prix circuit Kyalami. Starting things off then down towards turn 1 at the kink. Very slight right-hander we see here, taken absolutely flat out. Down towards Crowthorns, our first major overtaking opportunity, and a heavy braking zone to boot down into this open hairpin left here at Crowthorne. Then up the Juxgay Street, named after the Juxgay River. Turns 3 and 4, then up through Barbecue here at turn 5. Heading down towards Sunset. This long sweeping right-hander here at turn 6 gives us a bit of a snap from turn 6 in towards turn 7 as we dart up towards Clubhouse. You'll see the drivers have this sort of silent dance of which they've got a spike all the way over from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the track there. It can get dicey when side-by-side maneuvers do occur. Down through the S's we go now here at turns 8 and 9. Up to another overtaking opportunity as we barrel up through towards the run of Luerkop at turn 10. This is a double apexed corner starting here at turn 10, loops round to turn 11 as we begin the run back downhill towards a very fast left-hander here at Mineshaft, turn 12. This brings us into another, and I would say one of the most entertaining spots on this track. The run down towards the Crocodiles at turns 13 and 14. Open hairpin right here, very wide. So that does give drivers quite a lot of confidence to go side by side with one another on the run now towards Cheetah. And it's really a blink and you'll miss it here. You see, almost obscured by the tyre marks on it, that bright yellow sausage curve is absolutely lethal. We've seen it put GT3 cars up on two wheels, and we've seen just how prone to rolling the GT4s can be, so I would really not rule it off the cards, especially coming away from Barcelona, which was the site of one of the most famous incidents here on the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, to see something like that happen again. Down across the line then went the number 35 to a 151.810. Brandon Carr goes second fastest. We saw Thomas Romano's time in earlier on, but he now drops to fourth with Matthew Shanowski in towards third. Nearest to the line there went Curtis Belbray of Breaking Point Racing, goes to fifth. Nearest is the 626, so next down to the line, let's race mate Cedric Grenier-Massey. And worth noting here from race control were some changes coming up in towards this round of the championship. It will be a pit lane start for race one only for Justin Benton and David Tanguay due to major incidents reported in Barcelona. So that's just a heads up in advance as we see here, having got across the line now to the fourth fastest in the session, Cedric Grenier-Massey. Number 315 across the line a moment ago to start another flying lap, Ray Risti of Team Raceline. Then nearest the number 800, what has been quite the oddball choice, the Maserati of Karina Stinson, and really it is quite a sound here. Stinson down to the line, as it would appear. No, oh, there we go, just a bit late there, but time set now, seventh fastest for Karina Stinson. We'll go to catch back on board in a moment's time with the number 35, but I do want to get just to listen in there with that number 800. We heard it from a distance, and it was quite the soundtrack here. A criminally underrated road car, the Maserati Gran Turismo. And it is quite the soundtrack. I mean, listen to that. That is quite something. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous note there from that V8. 35 down towards the line then, and as it would appear, 151.752. Your current fastest time by Didier Potvin. Then from behind him, the number 19 approaches the line. Following on from them, the AAA and the 669, and then the number 15. Curtis Belbray, nearest to the line now, and across the line he goes from 6th. There was an improvement found there for him as we now drop into the last 4 minutes of this session. For the AM drivers, I should say. Number 626 nearest the line, Cedric Grenier-Massey. Across the line he goes. Did find an improvement by 4 tenths of a second, but needs another 4 tenths here to challenge Matthew Shanowski for that current third place in division. The 669 continues to hold his ground. Nearest is the 315 down towards the line, Ray Risti of Team Raceline Sim for Aston Martin. He's been the last AM driver to set a time of the session and goes up to 7th, ahead of Karina Stinson. And Stinson's signing to Malwar Racing, we saw it over the course of the World Series as one of the up-and-coming developing drives here on Competizione Performance League. It is going to be quite interesting to see what she makes of things over the course of this season. Of course, we saw in a time with Aston Martin was quite one well held in the AM category over on the World Series, saw a top 5 in division, later saw her first podium in division by the end of that season, and continues that spur of odd choices. And we think we now understand this is totally of her own volition. It's not that she doesn't know what a good choice looks like in GT4 and GT3. She much prefers the challenge, evidently taking a page out of the books of drivers like Christian LeBay, of course, the team principal and founder of Malwar Racing. Down to the line goes Didier Potvin. Across the line there finds 4 attempts worth of an improvement. So as we drop into the last 2 minutes of the AM portion of qualifying, before we see the semi-pros come out onto track, 151.372 by Didier Potvin, new fastest time. AAA across the line a moment ago in the case there of Brandon Carr. Alpine and Breaking Point Racing in second. Up in front of him was Thomas Romano in the top 5 in one of the Team Raceline cars. If I'm not mistaken, that is there. The number 19 Audi back into the pit lane. Shanowski back in as well. You can start to see multiple of the AM drivers withdrawing from their section of qualifying. 626 nearest, and Cedric Grenier-Massey jumps up to 3rd place, now over Matthew Shinosky, as it would happen to be the case there by, and I'm not so great on the maths, but I believe that is looking here in about 20, I think this is 27 thousandths of a second roughly. Very well met then by Cedric Grenier-Massey, looking at a division podium. We'll see how that stacks up in the wider scope of things. Number 800 is nearest. We saw for Stinson was a bit of a handful driving the Maserati around track here, but still has one more shot in qualifying, sliding her way out through Ingray Curve at turn 16. Coming up in a minute's time, then the semi-pros will be unleashed onto the track in our second of 3 sections in qualifying. We saw in chat earlier on Wishful Winnings, one of the Pro Series drivers, asking us what our favourite corner is here at the Kyalami Grand Prix circuit. I would say it's turn 13. Turn 13 and 14, the Crocodiles Complex. I've seen a lot of action over the years in that section of the track. It is quite an entertaining area to watch, as there's plenty of action, plenty of chaos down in that area, rife for incidents, and also as the prelude to the Cheetah Corner, turn 15. Down towards the line then, can there be another improvement found for this one here? Didier popped it across the line, and as it would appear, still has one more shot in this portion of quali. We'll see if he chooses to continue on with that. The 888 nearest to the line. As for Card, couldn't find anything of an improvement. Stays in Division 2nd. But we do note then, coming up on 10 seconds left in the AM section of qualifying. Coming up in a moment's time, if we go to check in with some of the semi-pros, we're seeing them start to queue for the exit. And now into the semi-pro section of qualifying. They're unleashed onto the track. We see there queuing was the number 46 of Adrian Zavala. Alongside him was the number 61 of Isaac McMillan. Up ahead of them, though, the Aston Martin of Brad Peacock for Breaking Point Racing. Brand new car, brand new coat of paint, albeit at the points penalty that has followed along with it there for Peacock. This is going to be a rather curious first step forward back into Aston Martin's quarters. We'll see how he makes of things here. Tried to diversify on vehicle choice, but has now swapped back in towards this round of the championship. Wishful Winnings in chat saying GT4s are fun. I would like VSR to do multi-class. Well, I do have good news for you. Coming up later on this week, I believe we are on with the HCCL Ginetta Summer Challenge. Now, the reason I say this is because we have 3 more weeks in that until Season 5 of the HCCL Multi-Class Championship. So what we're seeing at the moment is an interleague series, or I suppose that's the wrong word. It's a off-season series we're seeing over on HCCL that is serving as somewhat of a prelude to Season 5 of the Multi-Class Championship coming up later on in, I believe it's coming up in August. So do keep an ear to the ground on that one. We watch here then with the first of our drivers out onto the field, Brad Peacock, as Didier Potvin secures pole for Maloir Racing over in the AM category. That's one Aston Martin on pole, but could we be seeing something more coming from the other Aston in semi-pro? Looking to try and catch on board here as we scroll around to locate him at this time, Brad Peacock. If you're joining us for action later on this week, we're coming up around halfway of our broadcast itinerary. Later on this week, Wednesday evening, we have the first round of the OLR x VSR midweek series, taking the place of VSR Season 12. That comes up 7 o'clock Wednesday evening, the 24th of June 2026. Later on down the line, as we see here, starting with Brad Peacock in the semi-pro section of qualifying. Later on Friday, we're on board with the Porsche Super Cup Series, Round 2 from Orange Line Racing x VSR. And then on Saturday, we find ourselves with 2 more rounds as we get on board with the HCCL Ginetta Summer Challenge and the Continental Racing League Season 2 Round 2. Coming up on Sunday this week, 6:30 p.m. BST, we get on board for Round 6 of Season 6 of the NLRL Sunday League. Following on board then with Brad Peacock at this time. And it's going to be interesting to see what he can make with the new machinery. Stepping back in with Aston Martin. Could this be a step in the right direction, and was it worth the points penalty, having lost 10 points in the Drivers' Championship to make this move? Peacock finds himself on the back foot just before drop points have come into play, so he has really handicapped himself for going back to Aston Martin, but ultimately this could prove to be a decision absolutely worth making. It's all about the long game here on the longest ever season of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. 12 rounds in this championship, and we're only just staggering in to the first quarter of it here on round 3 of the championship before we head back to Europe. Mainland Europe to see the next 3 rounds, but then we also head to Great Britain for the 2 rounds following it for a 5 in a row in continental Europe. Our first 2 times coming up then from these 2 here, and we do take a look on towards the telemetry to see at the moment for Brad Peacock. His last lap, of course, was the outlap, 2 minutes 36.085, so information to hand right now, not particularly useful until we see it on paper. Down towards the line then, Brad Peacock and Isaac McMillan for the first of the semi-pros here in quali, and we see for both of them come up short against Didier Potvin. From behind them approaching is Adrian Zavala, goes fastest, 1 minute 50.466. Now, to bring back up the conversation surrounding qualifying predictions, of course, still a primarily pro car game, but there are 2 semi-pros in the mix, and Zavala is one among them, the other being Ruben Pereira. Keeping an ear to the ground then on updates from both of those Mercedes cars, the 46 and the number 8. Speaking of, Ruben Pereira is just out through Cheetah Curve down to Ingwe. Down to the line then goes Ruben Pereira, where Adrian Zavala found the fastest lap there. Pereira doesn't find anything on the charts right away. I believe number 59 from behind there. That's Joey Fisher. Actually, as it stood there, was the Jackal. So Joey Fisher, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's just started a flying lap. That's my mistake there. So Fisher on a flyer at this time. Across the line a moment ago, the Jackal of Breaking Point Racing. One of their key signings, of course, now leading in the Semi-Pro Teams Championship. Number 616 is nearby, though. That'll be one of the heavy hitters from Malwar Racing, Andrew Veldkamp with Chevrolet. Looking back at the qualifying data and the prediction data at hand, are there many hopes for Malwar Racing to emerge back into the lead of the team's championship in its lower divisions, or will it be primarily their game to play up in pro? Only time will reveal the answers, as we do find ourselves now halfway through on the semi-pro section of qualifying. Only 4.5 minutes left to go for them. Once we drop into the 10-minute mark, we will see the release of the pros onto the track, the premier category, the creme de la creme of this series. Number 46 nearest to the line, so here comes Adrian Zavala, 1 minute 50.466 to beat his own personal best and currently the session best. Across the line he goes, and as it would appear stays the same there. From behind him emerges the number 32 to the line, Aiden Christie in the top 5, division 4th in the semi-pros. From behind them there was the case for, I believe, yes, Adam Jeffrey of Malwar Racing, now 6th and division 5th. Number 91 nearby, so here comes that of, I believe, yes, Ivan Sanchez of Holkianos Motorsports, goes to division 2nd and 3rd overall, only 400ths away from an overall 2nd at this time, ahead of Didier Potvin's time in the 35 Aston Martin. I must say, it's been quite an impressive one here from Potvin. Now back in the pit lane, as you can see the pros queuing for exit. Ruben Pereira now goes 2nd fastest. So these are the prophesized 2 to be found inside of the top 10 amongst the pros by the end of this session. So this is a curious pair to watch, the 46 and the 8. Nearest to the line, number 616, Andrew Veldkamp from Cheetah Corner. That turn at 15. Down towards turn 16 at Ingwe, finds himself a reluctant P14. He's away from the major bulk of semi-pro cars in the last 3 minutes of their section of qualifying. Down to the line we go with Veldkamp from 14th on the grid. Now back up with the rest of the semi-pros into 11th. Getting closer there to the Jackal, 2,000ths between these two. Blink and you'll miss it between the pair. Number 27 is nearest, Brad Peacock. Recently back into Aston Martin. Down through turn 16 at Ingwe Curve. Currently, as it stands then, looking at Division 8th. Across the line he goes. Where does he find himself among the field there? No position found in terms of improvement. We see there across the line the new fastest time for Adrian Zavala, 150.034, 1.3 seconds over Ruben Pereira. And for Aiden Christie, now goes in a division 5th, 6th overall as it stands. 2 minutes left to go for him. Number 42 across the line a moment ago, Adam Jeffrey, division 7th, 8th overall. 91 nearest to the line. currently third in division, and as it stands only needs 100th and finds plenty more over that now to go to second overall. Ivan Sanchez of Holkianos Motorsports now to division and overall second until we see the release of the pros. Nearest at this time, the 999, the Jackal of Breaking Point Racing. And to clarify, what we originally thought was a change from AMG, no, it was a change from McLaren for Brad Peacock. Coming up then onto the last minute of their chunk of quali. If they can get just enough of a hustle forward here, we might see one more lap out of this one. As well as the 46, currently the pole sitter in division behind them. 3 races coming up around the corner after this qualifying session, and we're about to see the last of the 3/3 that comprise quali. In about 50 seconds, the release of the pros. Number 27 and number 46 nearest to the line we see from Brad Peacock and Adrian Zavala. What has so far been a fantastic qualifying session for this one. Making his way down through to Ingwe Curve, up in front of him the Aston Martin. And I believe by looks of it here, they will have one more lap to go around. So Peacock across the line there from 9th, stays where he is. As for Adrian Zavala, we don't find anything indicative of a 149 straight away here. 20 seconds left to go. Joey Fisher has set in a time. There goes division 4th, ahead of McMillan and Christie. As we do see 15 seconds on the clock here, and queuing up at the front of the field, the 119 and the 30. As we are about to see the release of the pros in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The pros are out now. We see a little bit of a jolted start there, but first out of the fray goes George Todd, following right in from behind. Down in 20th, Christian LeBay. Of course, all of these times about to change for these drivers today. The first out of the fray then from Malwa Racing, George Todd and Christian LeBay right behind them. Wishful Winnings, and the number 23 from behind them, I believe, is the number 30, yes, of David Tangway. Then from behind them, George Todd. Not George Todd, sorry, there, Brandon David. Easy to get the two mixed up in a vacuum, with the liveries looking rather the same between the privateer of the number 16 of Brandon David. The only thing changing things is a red stripe. At the end of the semi-pro section of qualifying, it is worth noting one final push in there as Isaac McMillan finds himself second at the end of the session. Ivan Sanchez third, Ruben Pereira in 4th, Adrian Zavala on pole in the semi-pros. So far then, your pole sitters by category: Didier Potvin in the AMS, semi-pro for Adrian Zavala. Now we get to see the story of who emerges on pole position in the Premier Pro category. Going to catch on board then with first among the fray, the number 12 of George Todd with Malwa Racing. And looking back in towards that qualifying predictions chart, as now it could not be any more relevant. Watching on board here with the number 12, who will look right now to find himself among that top 10, though the predictions do not seem to spell out the same story here for George Todd. Right now, LeBay looking at pole position by a very, very thinly held margin there, 13 thousandths of a second up over of David Tangway. Dylan Vecre looking at third, Wishful Winnings 4th, Bourne 5th. Adrian Zavala looking at 6th with Vincent Simard in 7th. Ruben Pereira looking at 8th. Richard Cecil and 9th. Brandon David looking to round out the top 10. So this could be a very close one here for those two leading semi-pros to see, will they actually rank in amongst the top 10 on the pro category? We see them from George Todd starting the first of our flying laps. On board then with the number 12, we head down towards Crowthorns. We'll be keeping an eye on the gap between himself, LeBay, Winnings and Tangway as our first 4 times from pro. Because if we start to see them squeeze up closer from that 4.3 second margin right now, there's definitely clear indication to suggest LeBay is gunning for pole. Of course, all the signs data-wise point towards another pole position for the 119 after clearing double victories in Barcelona last week. Looking to keep the ball rolling, of course, 3-time consecutive champion in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, as of yet undefeated in Pro. Now back up to leading the Pro Championship standings. It'll be up to drivers like this to challenge him over the course of this 12-round championship. Still 9 rounds to follow on from today. Making our way up and around Lukop. In towards turn 11 we go on the run back downhill towards Mineshaft. Making our way up and around Cheetah in towards Ingwe Curve. George Todd first among the times then for the pro category. Following in from behind him will be Christian Lebay. Across the line then goes the number 12 to second fastest. The 119 following in their midst. Will it be a new fastest time? No for Christian Lebay. Will it be for the car behind? We see across the line a moment ago went Wishful Winnings, but no time set there. Then the number 99 from behind them. Then Brandon David. Then we see in the background Richard Cecil in the number 5 from behind them. Approaching the line, I believe, is the 30 or the 120 for that matter. The twin Chevrolets of Tanguay and Simard. Across the line a moment ago, Justin Benton goes 12th. A curious tale then for Justin Benton. We caught on with him earlier on today to see him take victory in the endurance race at Spa over on the TRC Sprint Cup EU series. Now dropping down a peg towards the GT4s, is having a bit of trouble in the start of his qualifying endeavours. And the same story could definitely be said for that of Christian Lebay. That's a curiosity indeed. 48 thousandths away from Zavala's fastest time of the session, 150.034. Rare is it we see him get shown up by a lower division. Whatever they've been feeding Adrian Zavala before today has given him quite the tremendous pep in his step to go up and ahead of three-time champion Christian Lebay. As for George Todd, he finds himself 6/10 away from Lebay, 648 thousandths total from Zavala. Martel in a division 3rd, David looking at a division 4th, but all of them stagger behind the semi-pro lead of the 46 Mercedes of Adrian Zavala. I don't think anyone had that one in the bingo card for tonight's round, as we do not only find ourselves with 2 semi-pros, we actually find ourselves with 4 semi-pros in the top 10. Of course, all of those qualifying predictions are based off of countless hours of research and data collection from Simbot over what has been hours worth of private testing sessions in the server long before the event started. George Todd back towards the line here, and we do see from him now leaping ahead of Christian Lebay by only a couple thousandths of a second. Lebay down towards the line, and he doesn't find himself in the grounds for improvement. In fact, Wishful Winnings does, now putting himself, as it stands to be the case, 23 thousandths away from Christian Lebay. 71 thousandths from pole position. George Todd is closest to that lead, still held by the 46 semi-pro of Adrian Zavala. By 31 thousandths of a second, he finds himself 17 thousandths over Lebay and 40 thousandths over Winnings. This is quite the curiosity here in Kyalami. I don't think many people had it in the back of their mind that we'd be seeing a semi-pro lead. Of course, we have seen in other sort of driver division championships where there have been those breakthrough moments. We've spoke about TRC recently, of course, having covered their Sprint Cup EU series not too long ago today. But in their GT Manufacturers Cup, of which we've referenced many a time when speaking about drivers such as that of the number 21 of Justin Benton. In that series, we did see 2 occasions where a silver division driver, they're just below the top level support category, has taken 2 overall race wins. So it's not unheard of, but it would certainly be breaking new ice in this series, which has normally seen the pro drivers dominate tooth and nail over every other category, even since the inception of the AMS last season, where there was finally a distinction drawn up between either side of the Pro-Am Cup. Now we may very well be seeing the cracks in the ice between these 2 categories here, the bleeding edge between pro and semi-pro. That's the delightful part of that developing category, because the semi-pros are just right about there to where they, if they pushed a little harder routinely, find themselves in pro, and it's very likely to be a case for Adrian Zavala next season. He's definitely proving himself worthy of a pro title. Now, of course, as far as we've been led to understand, these division changes we only saw in Barcelona, and from what we've been told, those will not change now for the rest of the season for love nor money. I really do hope that stays the way that it is right now, because to see a semi-pro put quite the chill in the spine on the top level of this championship is quite something to behold. And for Christian Lebay, I think he has it in the taps here for just one more go. He'll have a few more seconds past the checkered flag, but it's really going to be a case of stamina. And the new fastest lap comes in 7 thousandths over the margin there. David Tangway, 150.027 to Adrian Zavala's 150.034. This is razor thin in Kyalami. This has been the great equalizer for this division between pro and semi-pro. It's worth considering at this time from first all the way down to 13th are within a second of that new fastest time. Nearest to the line here, number 6. So we go to locate that of Clinton Bourne, a time that has yet to find its way onto the charts here. The Australian talent for Milk Crate Racing makes his way to the line from 30th on this grid. Where does he find himself stacking in? 8th ahead of Cecil, Martel and Benton. That squeezes Justin Benton from the top 10, and it also finds us now at 14 cars within a second of that leading time. Last across the line there was George Todd. Lebay now needs to find 55 thousandths of a second for pole position. Otherwise, he'll find himself at the worst of times here, starting at the back of the second row. What a time that's been today here by Adrian Zavala. The fact that he may very well find himself starting in the top 5 by the end of this session. We could be in for quite an interesting triad of rounds. George Todd withdraws to the pit lane. We see for Christian Lebay making his way now down towards Ingwe Curve. Bear in mind, as I said, he'll have a few more seconds over the checkered flag. So he will have the opportunity to go for one more flying lap. Will he need one more flying lap is the question. Down across the line from 4th, goes fastest by 400ths of a second. A little glitch in the systems there for Lebay, but all rectified now as David Tangway holds on to that second and wishful winnings on pole. I don't believe anyone had that one on the cards there. What a sudden shift. It is worth considering the 119, to our understanding, is still lapping the track, but did he perhaps pump the brakes just a little bit there, not expecting anyone to show him up? Wishful winnings on pole. Could that still remain? Being the real question here, it is still worth noting at the end of this session, as far as our knowledge extends, Adrian Zavala, a semi-pro driver, will start in the top 5 here in Kyalami on the triple header. So 3 opportunities to do battle with the top category. But now remains the most dramatic shift of all. Where we thought this was going to be a runaway after that lap, we were quickly reminded there is more than just Christian Lebay in this championship. Wishful winnings, of course, showed us what he could do in Valencia right at the start of Season 4, and is now swift to remind us that hasn't changed. He's back in the pit lane, but he's going to be biting his tongue here, hoping that this does not change, that Lebay stays in second, and he has the best chance he can. Well, let's go to catch on board if we can here, just down through the crocodiles with Christian Lebay. To see right now, he is bouncing between times, so it is very likely he needs 110 thousandths. He goes up on 2 wheels down at Cheetah. Could that be the nail in the coffin? He needs to nail turn 16. You can see the time start to filter back into a green, but I don't think he has it. Down to the line, it's going to be wishful winnings. Looking at pole position, having missed out there on the last lap was Christian Lebay. Wishful winnings on pole in Kyalami. What a dramatic end to quali. Having a look here, 11 cars within a second of the fastest lap on one of the closest quali sessions. It is worth noting the top 5 are within 2 tenths. One of those drivers are from the semi-pro category. That is unfathomable. In this series, we are seeing a broad new chapter in the longest season to date of the Competizione Performance League Pro-Am Cup America Series. And I think what we are about to see ahead of us will be warfare. It is a frightening thing to scope up against here at the end of qualifying your pole sitters by division. Wishful winnings in pro, Adrian Zavala in semi-pro, Didier Potvin in AM. Taking a look back in towards those regulations before we head into race 1. Of course, just after qualifying today, we find ourselves facing up against 3 30-minute races in quick succession. And taking a look at it, neither of those 3 will feature mandatory pit stops as we wait for the grid to form up. No news for today's session besides the ones we've already told over on TRC's broadcast. Much of the same bulletins who have come in from the FIA with the recent updates to series like the European Truck Racing Championship, World Rally Championship, World Endurance Championship, Formula 1 and Formula E, among others. Some of the notable things we spoke about on TRC's broadcast earlier in Tuesday evening was the changes coming up towards the calendar for the first season of the Gen 4s in Formula E, seeing the introduction of the Circuit of the Americas, Brands Hatch, and the Circuit Zandvoort. The updates coming to European truck racing looks to introduce by the end of the decade cross-integration with hybrid and EV platforms, as well as hydrogen and internal combustion. And in the World Rally Championship, the Rally 2s are looking to get a kit conversion to Rally 1, allowing for cross-platform integration between Rally 2 and Rally 1 past 2027. Taking a look then with just under 3 minutes before the start of race 1 today here on Season 4, Round 3 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malwar Transport and live on TRTN. It's wishful winnings to a triumphant pole for Mercedes-AMG. He's ahead of Christian Lebay on the front row, alongside him David Tanguay on the second row there, and alongside him in fourth is Adrian Zavala, heading up the pack for the semi-pros today on all 3 grids. George Todd in 5th, with Brandon David in 6th. 7th there for Clinton Bourne. And Vincent Simard finds himself in 8th place. Richard Cecil in 9th, and Dylan Vekere rounds out the top 10 ahead of the 6th row there for Carl Martel and Justin Benton. In behind them, starting things off into the semi-pros, past Adrian Zavala's 4th place start on today's grid, just outside the top 10. Isaac McMillan on Division 2nd, Ivan Sanchez on Division 3rd. They're 13th and 14th. Behind them in 15th is Ruben Pereira, ahead of rounding out the 8th row, 16th place for the AM leader, Didier Potvin. Joey Fisher in 17th, Fabian Yahure in 18th place, and Aidan Christie in 19th. Adam Jeffrey rounds out the top 20 with Brad Peacock in 21st, the Jackal in 22nd, Andrew Velkamp in 23rd, with Brandon Carr in 24th, Cedric Grenier-Massey in 25th, Matthew Shanowski 26th, Thomas Romano in 27th, with Curtis Belbray in 28th, Ray Risty in 29th, and rounding out the 30th place on this grid, Karina Stinson. And as we are just about a minute before the start of the formation lap, we'll catch on board with wishful winnings. And as we get away onto Kyalami, we'll leave you on board with the number 23 set to kick off the start of the formation lap here on race 1. I'll be back to you as we get away. That comes up in about 20 seconds time then. So it's going to be the world's weight upon the shoulders of this one here. The number 23 of wishful winnings. Valencia's race winner, but can he do it 3 times in succession here in Kyalami? It would represent a sizable boost to his championship prospect, and it would put a serious dent in the portfolio of the 119, now leading in Pro, that being Christian Lebay, his teammate at Malwar Racing. Malwar 1, 2, and 3 in Pro. Meanwhile, they lead in the AMs for the start of all 3 races. Adrian Zavala stands by as lonesome in the semi-pro division. On board then with wishful winnings. We'll be back to you in just a moment's time. So on board at the moment with wishful winnings, taking us away now up through Barbecue Corner. We do note then, starting from the pit lane in line with rulings from Race Control, Justin Benton and David Tanguay for race 1. And also joining them there, Ray Risty in the number 315 Team Raceline Sim Aston Martin. Major overtaking spots to consider here at the Grand Prix Circuit Kyalami include that of Crowthorns at turn 2, as well as the run up towards Clubhouse at turn 7, just trailing off of Sunset at turn 6, Lurkop at turn 10, the Crocodiles at turn 13, and Ingwe Curve at turn 16. For those perhaps a little bit more on the curious end, you'll have to forgive me for the slightly raspier tone of voice this week. In line with the UK heat waves, it has not done a particularly great number. It's completely dried out my throat. That, and I also have something of an illness at the moment. Not entirely sure what, just coming down with something. Fortunately, though, everything a-okay. Just a little bit of damage to the old vocal cords. I suppose this line of work isn't exactly doing me many favours. But I wouldn't miss this opportunity for the world, especially after how qualifying has gone so far today. Sometimes the damage to one's own vocal cords is well worth the fantastic racing we get to see every week. Following on with Wishful Winnings, ones to watch over the course of this race. The entirety of that top 5, they're packed in like sardines, less than 2/10 front to back from all 5 drivers. These 5, along with the rest of this 30-car grid, 27 of which on track, 3 from the pit lane, are set to wage warfare here in race 1 and following swiftly there on after into race 2 and 3 today in the first triple sprint of the season. Of course, no mandatory pit stops in any of these 3 races. They are left by their lonesome to fend off from one another for 30 minutes at a time. In a total of 1 hour and 30 minutes worth of racing, we're about to see the first of 3 here. 30 minutes against the clock as we begin the run down towards the line. 30 cars in attendance, 27 on track, and 3 from the pit lane as we make our way down to the line for race 1 of 3 of Season 4, Round 3 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malwa Transport, here on Competizione Performance League. Without further ado, here at the home of the former South African Grand Prix. We are green and racing here in South Africa, and a great start from that front row right off the bat. V8 against V8 for the run down through to turn 2. I should say there, from the exit of turn 1 down towards turn 2. And we see they're drifting across the nose of the number 23, trying to cover him off on the run down through Crowthorns. Out wide goes Brandon Dammit. Following on with him there, I believe, was the number 120. As we make our way up through the Juxgate sweep, it's the 23 leading over the 119. The number 12 of George Todd in 3rd, with Adrian Zavala in 4th. Clinton Bourne says, I'll have that right off you, thank you very much, and taking an exit out through the run of Barbecue Corner at turn 5. We now find here from the case of the number 46 having fallen down through the pack on the top 10, as we do note yellow flags out at turn 5. Number 46 under siege there from Carl Martel up in front. We see getting up through the order George Todd, and that of, if I'm not mistaken, Dylan Vekere. There was an incident further down the line, the 315 Ray Risty and the number 21 alongside with him, Justin Benton, now emerging into that mix. I don't believe he was actually part of that incident, but he is getting up into it now. In fact, it was the 120 and the 30 that was the incident from there. It's my mistake. So David Tangwe and Vincent Simard, 2 drivers normally very well adept to one another over at Malwa Racing in the pro category, find themselves at the junction of quite a serious opening lap incident. Taking a look back up through the order then, Wishful Winnings leads over Christian LeBay by a hair's width down through the mine shaft at turn 12, heading up towards turn 13 and 14 at the Crocodiles. You can see the Chevrolet poised for an attack down in sector 3. Biding his chances here to go toe-to-toe with the number 23. It's been a great opening lap start here from Wishful Winnings to hold his ground up off 2 wheels at turn 15 as we barrel down through Cheetah in towards Ingwe. On this opening straight is exactly where he doesn't want to have LeBay within 0.3 of a second. We see a poor exit from turn 16 is only going to confound his issues even further. He must defend the inside, but it's all too late for him now, as alongside here comes the 119. 6.2 litres against 4. There's no replacement for displacement, as the saying goes. We see no truer statement then for Chevrolet, but do they have the rotation to match? Down through Crowthorns into the Juxgate sweep. They lose out the inside at turn 3, forced back into single file at turn 4. That took a serious set of stones to pull off what the 23 just did there, to go toe-to-toe with the 119 and live to tell the tale. George Todd gains more distance to these two through their squabbling in Sector 1. Clinton Bourne now falls in behind Dylan Vekere in the fight for the top 5, holding the fastest lap after lap 1 of this race. Adrian Zavala still along with inside of that top 10 and leading the semi-pros. Carl Martel in 7th, Brandon David in 8th, Ruben Pereira in 9th, and Isaac McMillan rounds out the top 10. Fabian Yahure behind them, Ivan Sanchez in 12th with Aiden Christie 13th, Andrew Velkamp in 14th, the Jacqueline 15th, and Adam Jeffrey in 16th. We do note another spree of incidents here, and we see this has been to the benefit of the number 800, who's now got up past Cedric Grenier-Massey, who was conflicted with an incident down through turns 2, 3, and 4. We do know one of the drivers has sadly disconnected from this race and is unable to get back in, and that is mighty unfortunate. Looking here is a very close pack of cars contesting here in the semi-pro category. Sanchez alongside with Christie, looking to fight up with McMillan in front. This is for Division 3rd in the semi-pros. In behind them, the Jackal, up and around the Crocodiles. It's worth noting up front, still fighting ongoing between the 3 leading pros. Winnings, LeBay and Todd. A civil war brewing at Maloir Racing between Chevrolet and Mercedes alike. Down the opening straight we go through to the kink. The 119 possibly looking for a run back on the inside here, but his last attempt wasn't so successful. So back onto the racing line goes Christian LeBay. George Todd now fastest in the session, as we now see getting the better rotation at Crowthorns. This could be the writing on the wall for Wishful Winnings. Side by side with Christian LeBay up towards turn 5. Now bled out there from the lead, trying for a switchback off the exit of turn 5. He's got the momentum, but he hasn't got the top end. And frustratingly so for Mercedes, they just can't hold a candle to Chevrolet on the straights. And there was just enough of a straight there to help LeBay back up into the lead. Up towards Clubhouse, and that has got to be a real sour taste in the mouth on the number 23 after such a formidable start and such a formidable defense. Played for a fiddle down through turn 1, 2, 3, and 4. We do note there some rather substantial damages off the start of today's race for Brandon David. He's in the top 10 at the moment. In Division 7th in the pros. Currently chasing down Carl Martel. Looking back at what has been super close fighting in this field at the moment, Aiden Christie finds himself defending on all quarters from multiple angles here in the semi-pro category, and all of that squabbling has invited Ivan Sanchez to come up and ahead now into 12th place. Meanwhile, close fighting here in the bleed-over point between pro and semi-pro alike. Just up in front, Dylan Vekere looks to fight now with this leading trio of Maloir Racing Machinery, the 161 Motorsports. Mercedes-AMG of Dylan Vekere has a point to prove today here in South Africa. Joining along with him then, Clinton Bourne of Milk Crate Racing and Adrian Zavala in the leading semi-pro number 46. The first 6 minutes of racing has seldom disappointed here in South Africa, and we are far from done in terms of the grand scope of racing on round 3 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Looking further around the field, though, plenty of curiosity spiking in this moment for what's going on back down in the semi-pros. We do note here, this is what the 161 Mercedes of Dylan Vekere is seeing at this time. He's got a clear line of sight on the race lead. The 119, the black and red Chevrolet of Christian LeBay leading the charge over those twin Mercedes cars from Maloir Racing on the podium. Wishful Winnings, the slightly more red of 2. And George Todd, the slightly whiter of 3. You do know there is very close to be fighting between those two in a moment's time, but let's go to catch on board with some action a little further down the line to see Karina Stinson holding off a 3-pronged defensive for Maserati at this time. Cedric Grenier-Massey looking to go for the inside at turn 5, and she's given him plenty of room. With an exit like that, what on earth's going on here for the Maserati? The 315 and the 35 catching up with, and that has been recent disaster for Didier Potvin. It is worth considering that as an angle, because it has invited in Curtis Bell-Bray to the lead of AM up over Brandon Carr, who we did see not too long ago a double victory out of with Alpine, and now leading in the AMs after much dismay to the 35 Aston Martin of Didier Potvin. The 888 Alpine is leading AM. Here in race 1, Brandon Carr of Breaking Point Racing. We saw 2 wins out of him in Barcelona. The ball only keeps rolling in the 888 Alpine. More on with him later, though, as we do see here Evan Sanchez versus Aiden Christie on the cards. You see, it is currently looking at the scope here of about a 4-car pack, possibly actually 5-car pack, fighting with Evan Sanchez out in front. He's trying to catch up to Isaac McMillan in the number 61. Still leading the charge at this time among the land of the giants is this one here, Adrian Zavala, representing Motorsport International League in the number 46 semi-pro Mercedes. In the stomping ground of the Premier Pro category, he has put on quite the show here, albeit squeezed from the top 5, but still clinging on to the coattails of the number 6 Chevrolet of Clinton Bourne by 0.4 of a second in the last interval just gone. Looking up the order to see as well, George Todd has not backed off in his efforts to try and overtake Wishful Winnings in this time. Half a second between the pair of them as they continue to hemorrhage ground from the leading 119. Christian LeBay now with the fastest lap after nearly 10 minutes of racing here on race 1 of 3. Leads in Kyalami after 2 consecutive Pro Division wins last week in Barcelona. Another ongoing fight this time. Brandon David challenging 7th place from Carl Martel. We see here the 99 defending that ground up through Leurkop at turn 10 in towards turn 11. Back on with the semi-pros just for a moment here as we do see continued fighting with the 91 and 32. Aiden Christie, notably last season on his debut to the AM category in the number 32 Audi R8, won in the Circuit Paul Ricard. An exceptional performance that landed him this seat here in semi-pro, currently in the division top 5 on race 1. 13th overall on the track. Now, a curiosity worth paying attention to here is what's been going on in the AM category, as it's been a bit of a collision course between 2 divisions here as Brad Peacock tries to carve his way back up through the field. I imagine he won't be shown much of a elbows out defense from his teammate Brandon Carr out in front. That's been a curious one here for Karina Stinson. She's moved back over to let the majority of the grid on by. It's a curious take there from the Maserati. Now, we don't really know exactly what she's been up to in the first 10 minutes of racing. We did see was the likelihood of some fighting, but she's been playing things a little bit more passively. So would there have been possibly some kind of incident earlier on that maybe she's trying to take accountability for? We have seen drivers do that before. We even saw it here on TRC earlier on today in the final lap where it was Daz Kane just moving on by to allow Amiel Goddard to take the Bronze Division win in Spa. It's a very curious thing. You do see here much more elbows out in their approaches to a top 5 fight. And that does tow along 3 additional cars behind them here between Dylan Vekere and Clinton Bourne, fighting for 4th place because Adrian Zavala is right behind them. Carl Martel behind Zavala. Out wide goes Vekere. That could be a free position. Back into the top 5 goes Adrian Zavala, following along with the 99 and 16. Going in towards Leurkop. An enraged Dylan Vekere dropping ground now invites Adrian Zavala back to the top 5. After running wide at turns 8 and 9 there at the S's, Dylan Vekere now faces off against Brandon David on the run down to one of the most potent overtaking spots in Kyalami, looking for the inside but couldn't yet commit to it. The 16 trying to go for the inside line at the Crocodiles. We saw out wide there was the 46, but holds his ground from within the top 5 out through Cheetah Curve. In behind him, Dylan Vekere swiftly trying to regain the ground he's just lost, and side by side makes contact there with the rear left quarter on the 99 of Carl Martel. Now back in behind him in the slipstream train, carved out by the Chevy in front of him. But now that's also invited in Brandon David side by side on the run up towards turn 2. Crow Thorns is invited in many an overtaking opportunity. Often was the case where there's been plenty of room for counter-attack. Not on this case. The number 16 over the 161. Brandon David holds his ground from Dylan Vekere through turn 5 at Barbecue. A bit of a squirrely approach by both parties there. The 161 skids over through turn 5 on the run towards Sunset at turn 6. Meanwhile, up in the top 3, George Todd is gaining ground. It's contact, though. The 161 collides with the 16. Almost spinning around then was Brandon David, and pumping the brakes was the 161 of Dylan Vekere. Ruben Pereira joins the mix now, second in the semi-pros, looking to contest 8th, possibly 7th, with his fellow Mercedes cars. So we see they form a sizable pack of vehicles here from 7th all the way to 12th, all Mercedes, between a Chevrolet up in front of them and an Audi out behind them. Looking up in the top 3 to see here very recent action from the number 23 and the number 12, George Todd versus Wishful Winnings. Heading to Mineshaft. Todd's on the inside. How much is he willing to risk here? Super easy to get wiped out, but I think the 23 has managed that by himself. We see there number 23 so nearly taking himself out of the race, and that does ultimately forfeit second to number 12 of George Todd. Wishful Winnings will be beside himself with rage. Yellow flags out for the number 21, Justin Benton, in a spot of bother at turns 10 and 11 at Lurkop. That's now back in the green flag conditions with 17 minutes left to go. We are rapidly approaching the halfway mark here on race 1. We see here the number 91 AMG. Ivan Sanchez versus Isaac McMillan. And this is for the semi-pro podium, so the Spaniard has been steadfast in his commitments to see more podium finishes in division this season. Sanchez has put on a great show of things here in Season 4 thus far. Not looking to disappoint in the opening rounds, and here in the triple sprint, there couldn't be any more opportunities in a single race day than today. Out behind them, Aiden Christie tries to fight off 2 Chevrolets. Andrew Veldkamp in the 616 has got the run on him here down towards Sunset, but he will have the longer road to travel upon at Sunset Corner at turn 6. A long right-hander and a little bit of contact to go along with it. Do the maths on that one, and the 616 could never have hoped to get the position. It's only until here at Clubhouse where he would have had the chance for a counter-attack behind them. We do see here some side-by-side action between 2 Chevys, the Jackal and Vincent Simard. Behind him, Adam Jeffrey in the 42. Still to the outside here, that 120. It's going to be muscled out for space into the S's. We'll have it back, though, down through turn 9. But up towards turn 10, he's on the back foot here. That's if he can't get the ground up over the 999 for 15th. The Jackal defends the inside, up and away from Vincent Simard. Behind them, Adam Jeffrey in the 42. Trying to keep the hammer down here and let 6.2 litres of Chevrolet LT1 do the talking. He's barking up the wrong tree, trying to get an engine advantage here. It's only Chevys to be found on our screens at the moment, but with a better line out through turn 12. It's worth noting the 42 still in range, but the 120 now up and ahead of the 999. Has that kept the door open long enough for Adam Jeffrey to come and size up a move here on the Jackal in towards turn 15? Not by the chances of it at the moment. Halfway through the race, and LeBay leads now 2.4 seconds over George Todd in second place. Wishful Winnings in third, with Clinton Bourne in fourth. Adrian Zavala leading semi-pro from fifth. Carl Martel in sixth place, with Brandon David in seventh. Dylan Vekere in eighth place. Ruben Pereira in ninth. Rounding out the top 10 is Fabian Yahure of Breaking Point Racing Mercedes. Isaac McMillan in divisions third as it stands right now, trying to defend away Ivan Sanchez. He's 11th overall. Sanchez 12th. Aiden Christie in 13th, with Andrew Veldkamp in 14th. Simard 15th. Jackal 16th. Jeffrey 17th. Tanguay in 18th. Cecil 19th, and Benton rounds out the top 20. Carr 21st. Peacock 22nd. Chalosky 23rd. Belbray 24th. And Grenier Massey in 25th. Actually, as it stands there, Belbray having fallen plenty down the order, now behind Ray Risti. So now to update that, Grenier Massey 24th. Potvin 25th, Romano 26th, Belbray 27th, possibly to be 28th, as we see damage on the nose, the number 15, Ray Risti, looking to go for position here for 27th in towards turn 2, is up into it. Down to 28th then goes Belbray. 29th for Karina Stinson, 1 DNF so far. Wishful Winnings, it has been not the start he's been hoping for, but of course he still holds the cards on the next 2 races. I would be genuinely surprised we come away from today's event without seeing a win from this one here. He's got all of the makings to see himself to at least one of the 3 available wins today. He's been a very quick learner, whether it's GT3 or GT4. He knows not to make the same mistake twice. And that's very likely to be something he carries into that next race. I don't think he's going to be doing anyone any favors, let alone his teammates at Mauer Racing. This is a solo sport for him, despite wearing the MRT badges. He's in it for the big pot of the Pro Drivers' Championship. Looking at the semi-pro, leading this race then. It has definitely been quite a curious one. Leading in this division, I should say. The number 46, definitely indicative drive of the pro category, but with the recent statement by Race Control that the divisions would not be altered after Barcelona. He will spend, by looks of things, the remainder of the season in with the semi-pro, so I would say this is likely to see quite the runaway act here from Adrian Zavala in the semi-pro championship. I think it would be, though, a little naive to at least not consider Ruben Pereira as part of that mix. He is a very capable driver in semi-pro. Same story for Isaac McMillan, of course, taking a look back through the last couple of races in this season. Of course, 3 to speak of in total across 2 rounds of the championship. And in the semi-pros, we have seen quite a fair few different victories. McMillan, Peppers and Zavala to speak of there across Valencia and Barcelona. So no one driver has gone consecutive in the semi-pros. That's a story for Pro and Am. Looking back up through the order. Wishful Winnings escaped sight here from this ongoing fight. Adrian Zavala versus Clinton Bourne. Let's go to catch on board with these two. What is looking to be quite an interesting development up in the top 5. We also see here just some ongoing fighting for 16th. Down through turn 12 on here with David Tanguay of Chevrolet. Trying to go for the outside line, setting himself up for a switchback on the 42 of Adam Jeffrey. Couldn't find any ground of it there as he makes his way up towards Cheetah. I'll just go to catch on board with some more action here. The 120 versus the 616. This is Vincent Simard looking to challenge Andrew Veldkamp for 13th place on track. But again, he's still looking to locate the fight going on for that top 5. As it stands right now, Adrian Zavala, in the time last having since seen him, has now got, by looks of it here, up and ahead of Karl Martel. Oh, and hang on a second, it does stand to reason. That's for the reason why. He was actually fighting with Clinton Bourne, who is now in the pit lane. Has that been a disconnect for him, or has he come into the pits of his own volition, being the real question? 10.5 minutes left to go. We have seen a history of connection troubles for the Australian talents on this grid. Has that been something that's come to bite Bourne on the backside on tonight's round of the championship? That would be heartache for the Milk Crate Racing number 6. In the time between seeing them there, we now see Adrian Zavala up to 4th in this event, still leading semi-pro within eye shot of the podium, courtesy of Wishful Winnings and George Todd. 10 minutes left to go on race 1. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say a battle per se. We are looking at ongoing close driving between the two Breaking Point racing cars because they are looking more likelier than not to aid one another. We note here now up to 27th on this field is Karina Stinson. Normally sighted towards the back of the field fighting with this one here, Curtis Belbray, but you can see that that Camaro was still in the mindset of a GT3 race here. That Camaro in a far worse state of repair than Belbray would prefer it to be in the BPR number 15 Camaro. One can wish, though, the Mustang would be in GT4. Of course, there is a GT4 Mustang, just not one in this game. Pitifully so. The 7th gen Mustang also used as part of the Mustang Cup over on IMSA. Also, sadly, we don't get to have any of that here. Would be very fun, I imagine. In terms of fighting among the top 10, the last of it we're seeing here is between Fabian Yahure, who we can see connection troubles are afoot for the Venezuelan talent in the number 28 BPR Mercedes. Right now, Isaac McMillan could be on the cards to take 9th place if Yahure suffers a disconnect. He's currently 3rd in division. He's trying to hold off Ivan Sanchez, who's been on a ruthless pursuit for that last of the semi-pro podium with 8 minutes to spare here in Kyalami. Behind them, the Audi and the Chevrolet. Aiden Christie and Vincent Simard still in pursuit. 0.7 of a second from one another at this time. Just under 8 minutes left to go here in Kyalami. We find ourselves facing down what is likelier than not to be about 5 more laps in today's race before we head in towards race 2. McMillan v Sanchez among the closest fights today, also with that of Fabian Uhure, but across 2 categories. We're looking at a division podium fight. In the semi-pros, it would be for an overall 9th place on the grid at large. Further down the line, still close to one another, but I wouldn't say this is close to fighting between these two. The Alpine and the Aston Martin of Breaking Point Racing's Brandon Carr and Brad Peacock in AM and semi-pro. With Brandon Carr leading in the AM category, he looks to go by looks of things here, looking after round 2 of the championship, a hat-trick of division victories. And with 2 more races to follow thereafter, we could see quite the hot streak coming up for Alpine here in Kyalami. The main thorn in their side, though, is going to be the Aston Martin of Didier Potvin, who has had a less than successful first of 3 races. But again, as we said for Wish for Winnings, he's got 2 more attempts at this, and it's unlikely he'll make the same mistake twice. Right now, though, he does look to fight his way back onto the podium, very close to Cedric Grenier-Massey and Matthew Shinosky. So let's go to catch on board, if we can, here with the Aston Martin of Didier Potvin. Looking to go and locate him then. We do see just how close things are getting for Aiden Christie just before we go to catch on with the Aston of Didier Potvin. Aiden Christie with the world's weight stacked on his shoulders. It is not an easy place for him to be here in the semi-pro division, trying to fend off an advance by a pro in the 120, Vincent Simard. We see here for the 35, we caught him at a very interesting time because forfeiting was Matthew Shinosky to go way earlier onto the brakes. Effectively yielded position off to Grenier-Massey and Potvin as they find themselves in a real squeeze for Division 2nd. Getting up and ahead, there goes the 669 of Shinosky, so Chevrolet have got straight line speed over both Aston Martin and BMW. And this is quite interesting stuff because no one manufacturer we can see here is holding an advantage for maneuverability. Heading up towards Lurkop, in front of them is that of Brad Peacock, who has now fallen in behind his teammate, Brandon Carr. On board here with Didier Potvin, a very exciting view for what is currently the fight of Division 2nd down in the AMS. Overall, though, they're fighting for 21st. The 27 backs off to allow all 3 of these cars on by, down through to the Crocodiles as we continue to follow here with a 35, the one challenging to retake his post on the podium. We can see damage in the background on the number 27. Number 28's connection still on the fritz there. It is quite worrisome for Fabian Uhure. Off in the background, the 27 in the gravel, so more than likely to be in the pit lane in a moment's time then for Brad Peacock. Making our way on to lap 13. Under 5 minutes left to go here on race 1. We are facing off against the last 2 laps of racing available to us today as the 119 makes its way up and around the Crocodiles. Short to start the penultimate lap of race 1 of 3. Watching here with Didier Potvin looking to return to the podium in the AMS after a disastrous turn of events took him away from the division lead. We see him right up to the rear bumper. Almost, I think, a tap there between himself and Matthew Shinosky as they go side by side. But again, watch as the Chevrolet just picks up its things and walks away as we get up towards top gear there, but backs off short onto the brakes. This is a curious thing about Shinosky. Very early onto the brakes, much more delicate on that pedal than most. We see, though, off the exit of Clubhouse, he can get the hammer back down, and he's right on with. You can see it on the radars there, looking over the rear bumper. You can still see that bright blue and pink Chevrolet hasn't gone really too far away. Didier Potvin now back up to Division 3rd as it stands. Now with his sights fixed on Cedric Grenier-Massey, the question being, with only 2 more laps left to play for, does he have enough time here in Kyalami in race 1 of 3 to regain 2nd? We'll check on with him a little later on. Number 27, though, that being Brad Peacock, as a stop-go for speeding in the pit lane, so it has been a disastrous end for him as things happen for his first of 3 races. Now he's just got to soldier on and get to the end of this one. He knows he's got 2 more opportunities. That's the bliss of these multi-race rounds of the championship. As we see up in front is Justin Benton looking to fight here with what looks to be, yes, Richard Cecil in a damaged number 5 Mercedes off the exit of turn 5. Further up the field from these two for the fight of 15th place, Andrew Veldkamp versus Adam Jeffrey. This is, as it stands, Division 6th up for grabs. With Zavala still leading their division, the semi-pros all the way up from 4th on the grid. Brandon David fighting with Carl Martel. Meanwhile, Wishful Winnings is only half a second out and closing on George Todd. You're about to see here from Christian LeBay. It actually could be closer to a case where we'll be seeing one more lap after this one. We may have undercalculated. Number 12, George Todd has a drive-through penalty and pulls to one side. He's actually missed the pit lane, and yet he's going to back it up. He's going to back the car up. He's found the opportunity to do so, but he needs to try and turn in. Can he make it? Yes, just about. Now that is certainly an interesting thing from the pit lane. Definitely not the first time here on Competizione Performance League that we've seen a bizarre incident involving the pit lane. If you joined us for the Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, you would have seen the time where I think it was Vincent Simard missed the pit lane entry on Donington Park. Actually went for the one that starts down at Goddard's at turn 12 and ended up slamming headfirst into the barriers. Drive-through then served by the number 12 as he re-enters the track. We're on the penultimate lap of racing here from Christian LeBay's point of view. .6 seconds in the lead. We hear, though, the sound of sifting gravel. Who is it in trouble? I believe it was the 800, Karina Stinson. We did see on the map going slow out through that section. We see a side-by-side with Ray Risti. Now up and ahead, the Aston Martin still to the inside, though, as we enter Lurkot, but more hesitant on the brakes than the Maserati. It's a bizarre motor to see in GT4, one that has been spoken about in myth and legend by GT4 racers as one of the roughest cars to drive in this game. And here we see Karina Stinson taking to it like a duck to water. Up through to the Crocodiles, though, you can see so early on the brakes, and for every reason, she doesn't have ABS. Whereas we see for Ray Risti, way late onto the brakes, all the way into the gravel. Right onto the nose there of the 119. And that's the settings menu for some reason. It's been a long week. It's been a long week, and it's only been 2 events. We're on our 3rd today, so this is going to be quite an interesting week ahead. For some context, and perhaps we'll spin the tail over the course of this last lap here with Christian LeBay. It's been a record-breaking week of heat here in the UK. Not something our nation is designed for, or its people. It has been hellish conditions, and what's even worse than that is I'm ill. So I am just in total brain fog the entire week. That's going to be entertaining. See for Dylan Vekere. Trying to catch up to this fight here between Brandon David and Carl Martel. He's 2.088 out from these two. And this could really come to a point at any one time between these two. They haven't got much more time to sort this out among themselves for 4th place. Looking for a possibility of a run from turn 6 in towards turn 7. We can see preemptively covering what would have otherwise been the inside line. That would have been the point of no return for that overtake was Carl Martel. We see for George Todd versus David Tanguay as the number 32 is in trouble. That's Aidan Christie. Having brought out the yellow flags off the Exeter barbecue, the Audi gets back up and running, but he could lose the top 5. And that, I believe he does. The 42 gets up and ahead. You see, though, in the case of Adam Jeffrey, actually loses that out to Andrew Veldkamp. So going to catch on board here with Christian LeBay as we go to locate the Chevy at this time. And this has definitely been a little bit more difficult than one would have expected. Just catching there with Christian LeBay as he goes up on 2 wheels as he makes his way round towards the line here. He's looking at a hat-trick of victories to start things off here in Kyalami. The 119 is greeted by the checkered flag at the end of race 1. Christian LeBay wins race 1 here in Kyalami. And in terms of your division winners, we're not long from seeing our second then as Wishful Winnings takes the checkered flag second. Adrian Zavala wins in the semi-pros. A brilliant performance from the number 46. Unmistakable stuff here in race 1. Carl Martel down to the line, and it's a hair's width between himself, Brandon David, and Dylan Vekere. 44 thousandths between these two at the line, as the number 16 was but within a hair's width of 4th. Dylan Vekere nearly returns to the top 5. Ruben Pereira sees a division 2nd on race 1. Overall 7th, Fabian Yahure in 8th. Rounding out the semi-pro podium then is the number 61 of Isaac McMillan. 10th place for Ivan Sanchez. David Tangwe in 11th. George Todd in 12th. Andrew Velkamp in 13th. Adam Jeffrey 14th. The Jackal 15th. Richard Teasel in 16th. Justin Benton in 17th. Aidan Christie in 18th. Vincent Simon in 19th. And about to see him down towards the line here. A hat-trick of victories awaits this one here. Out through turn 16, approaching the line. Brandon Carr wins for the 3rd time on the trot for Alpine in the AMS. And what a start to this round of the championship. The first triple sprint of the season has given us nothing short of theatrics. Didier Potvin turns his fortunes around, redeemed to 2nd in the AM division. Matthew Shanowski sees division 3rd, up and ahead of what looks to be that of Thomas Romano. Now division 4th, Cedric Grenier-Massey. Is he out of fuel? I think so for the BMW as it limps to the line. Karina Stinson looks just outside of that division top 5. Her fortunes turning around right at the checkered flag there ahead of Belbray and Risti, as limping to the line there, a besmirched Cedric Grenier-Massey. His BMW, dry of any juice, sees the back of the top 5 in the AMS. Your division winners at the end of race 1. Christian Lebay in pro with the fastest lap. Adrian Zavala in semi-pro. And Brandon Carr in the AMS. In terms of division victories, it's a hat-trick across Pro and AM for Lebay and Carr, and a brand new victory for that of Adrian Zavala. So taking a look away from the session at hand as the checkered flag descends, we are now at the end of race 1 and taking a look onto the charts once again. Coming up just around the corner, another 30-minute race here in Kyalami, as we head in towards race 2. After that one, race 3 in the 3rd and final of today's events. And so looking back on towards that calendar, of course, we've still plenty more racing to get underway with here in Kyalami, but taking a look towards the road ahead as we do find ourselves met with 5 European rounds after our visit to Africa. We'll be heading back to Germany in the Nürburgring for the first endurance race of the season. 90 minutes of racing at the GP Strecke, a brilliant circuit formed in the mid-80s to join on with the mighty Nürburgring Nordschleife. So close to seeing its centenary anniversary come next year in 2027. Red Bull Ring joins thereafter for round 5 as we head back onto the standard 60-minute format that we saw in Valencia at the start of the season. The Red Bull Ring, otherwise the Österreich-Ring, former design was nearly double the size, if I'm not mistaken, of its current, and home of the Austrian Grand Prix, also the Styrian Grand Prix in 2020. Zolder, the former home of the Belgian Grand Prix, will make round 6 as we head back into the double sprint or the dash races. Now, the 2x40 on July 14th. That'll be in the early hours of the morning on July 15th for our British and European viewers. Otherwise, then, after our visit to mainland Europe, heading out from Germany towards Austria and then out west to Belgium, we'll be heading even further west over to the UK for Alton Park and Snetterton on July 21st and 28th. Then we head to the United States for Watkins Glen in Schuyler County, New York State, and Indianapolis over in Indianapolis, Indiana, USA. Then for the penultimate round of the championship to the land down under in New South Wales, Australia in Bathurst for another triple sprint as one of 3 this season. The other one we'll be seeing is in Alton Park, so that's going to be an exciting one to see after today's event. And our final round of the championship in Austin, Texas, 90 minutes under the baking heat in Texas at the Circuit of the Americas, which we spoke about very recently, will now be joining the world of Formula E as one of 2 American destinations coming up next season in its recent bulletin. The Circuit of the Americas will join alongside Homestead Miami as the 2 American destinations of the upcoming, I believe, 13th or 14th season. They have a different naming convention in Formula E, but otherwise the 2026 to 2027 FIA Formula E World Championship. So taking a look back onto the same grid here with 3 minutes before the start of the formation lap once again here on race 2 of 3 on season 4 round 3 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro Am Cup America Series. Wishful Winnings is returned to his original qualifying position up at pole, and that'll be the same story for that of Didier Potvin, who ended up finishing 2nd in division from what was an otherwise high 15th place, with the nearest car being 7 positions behind Brandon Carr, who later went on to take his hat-trick of victories here in Kyalami. Otherwise, the order remains exactly as it is, so ones to keep a close eye out for certainly still comprise that top 5, but I would also say taking a look further down the line to keep an eye on the Triple Eight of Breaking Point Racing's Brandon Carr. Also say keeping an eye out as well for fighting between these two here, as well as taking a look a little further up the order, Brandon David and George Todd. It's definitely also worth the conversation surrounding Dylan Vekere and Carl Martel as well. We also saw super close finish at the checkered flag there at the end of race 1. A minute and a half before we get back in towards racing. So we'll leave you on board with this grid for the time being and back to you in a moment as we head in towards race 2. Wishful Winnings in chat asking, how was race 1 for you? I would say that was an easy look at a 7 to 8 out of 10 race here. I would say we're getting close to 9 out of 10. But again, I wouldn't say we've yet found that top standard. We've seen some fantastic races here on this series before, but I'd always say the pursuit of perfection never ends. I would say what we've seen is a very, very strong contender for one of the best races of the season. Valencia still stands high in that regard, but very solid start to things, and I'm now very curious to see how race 2 and 3 pick up thereafter.
Seconds.
On board then with Wishful Winnings, the number 23 to take us away back into the formation lap. And after what was a less than ideal turn of fortune for him that saw him away from a possible race win since Valencia, we'll see if he'll find himself met with the same circumstances again. He won't be looking to make the same mistake twice here. The number 23 leads us on into formation lap number 2. The rest of the grid at his heels there. Joey Fisher returns to us. Now from the pit lane as it stands for him in the number 59. And given his current position, we do note that it was a disconnect for Clinton Bourne in the last race, now starting in what is otherwise grid slot 33 on a 30-car grid. So it's going to be another one to watch here if we go to catch on board much farther down the line here with the number 6 starting all the way at the back. If we go to find him here, Clinton Bourne. Not an easy challenge to face up against here, but we've seen him rise to the occasion in times gone by, so it's going to be one certainly interesting ride to go along with here with Clinton Bourne on the race start, having to carve his way back up through the field. Now, I'd say it's a very likely chance he'll be up and around that top 15 by the end of race 2. I'd say even further north than that. It's just a case of keeping his head low and out of trouble. Easier said than done when you've got to carve a line up through both AM and semi-pro to see yourself back in with the main pack of pro cars at the front of the field. He'll certainly have quite the challenge cut out for him here on race 2. I wouldn't say this is anything he can't do. For the 119, the objective, very simple. Do exactly what you did on the last race. A foolproof strategy to attack that number 23. He knows he has the pace in the straight lines. He knows he has the capacity in the corners. He's a lot less wobbly in the corners. He understands that machine like he understands himself. It's an extension of oneself on the track here, and never has a pairing been better, in my mind, than Christian LeBay and his Chevrolet Camaro. Time though, 6:04 p.m. so the sun is starting to set. A likelihood to see nighttime racing by the end of this round of the championship definitely remains on the cards. Joey Fisher is starting from the pit lane. We get the full confirmation of that now. You see, oh, that's the replay button. Yeah, force of habit there, folks. That's my mistake. Normally, what is the case is we were able to select the return to garage button, which is currently grayed out for no reason, and go to see the wider perspective of things. That's just muscle memory leaking in there. That's why we need to get a keypad at some point. Looking to catch on board with that leading Mercedes back on board with Wishful Winnings as we make our way up towards the Crocodiles, turns 13 and 14. Now beginning that formation process one more time. You'll get to do it all over again on race 3, now at the midway of round 3 of the championship. As we crawl in past the first quarter of Season 4 in a 12-round championship. After race 1 saw LeBay into a hat-trick of victories, and the same story for Brandon Carr and Adrian Zavala to win in the semi-pros. Let's see how it all pans out on our second of 3 goes. Making our way down towards the line then. 30 cars in attendance, 29 on track and 1 from the pit lane for race 2 of Season 4, Round 3 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, powered by Malwa Transport. And live on TRTN here from South Africa. For the second time of 3, we're green and racing here in Kyalami, and a great start once again to be expected from the number 23 and the number 119. Right on their trails again is the number 30, looking to make this 3 abreast in towards Crowthorns at turn 2. We can see David Tangwe has got his nose on the rear quarter but falls back in behind. It's contact between himself and Wishful Winnings. Christian LeBay soars away with the lead, and have a glance in here because on the inside at the Jukske, now taken to the wall, was Adrian Zavala. Disaster there as he moves back into the crowd, and a huge pile up down in Sector 1. Collected in the mix, countless drivers as we see the madness ensue. Among the mix there, we see stricken down through the order, now escaping it actually I should say, is the 669, but the 888, we saw him around right at the very start there of race 2. A horrific start then for many involved. We see the recent casualties now starting to form up, but one of the immediate benefactors of this start has been Christian LeBay. The contact from behind from Winnings, from Tangwe on Winnings, I should say, has now shifted the 119 very early into the race lead here on race 2. Wishful Winnings in a begrudged P2 there against his own better will. Taken aside by the number 30, the number 16 of Brandon David in 4th, George Todd in 5th, Dylan Vekere in 6th, Brandon David in 7th, Richard Cecil in 8th, Justin Benton 9th. Actually now looking here to do battle with Vekere and Cecil. He's 8th place as it stands right now. Behind him, Carl Martel and Vincent Simard round out the top 10. Behind them, Isaac McMillan, Aidan Christie and Ruben Pereira now make the semi-pro podium. It's contact again, this time between the 2 teammates. Simard and Martel make contact. We see the rest of the pack trying to filter on by. Isaac McMillan leads semi-pro here on race 2. After a horrific starting lap incident there, Adrian Zavala was wiped out on lap 1 after his first victory here in Kyalami. Second time has not been the charm for the number 46. That was against any of better judgment for the 46. He was taken out from behind. There was nothing he could have done given that circumstances there. That's heartbreak for Adrian Zavala. Wishful Winnings has not given up all hope just yet here. He knows there's still plenty of time, 27.5 minutes here in race 2. And while his teammates have not been much an assist to him here to secure that race win after Valencia in round 1 of the championship, he will still hunt one down with every fibre of his being. He'll be very, very cautious on the run into race 3 now to watch on both angles. Attacked from behind, a tap from the 30 behind him is what ultimately kicked off this major incident. Justin Benton in the mix at the moment, looking to fight with Richard Cecil, both of which seeing top 10 positions at this time. Isaac McMillan trying to defend away from Aidan Christie. Hasn't seen a division win since Paul Ricard, if memory serves rightly. Looking back through the previous wins this series, Adrian Zavala, and I should point this out, it was a bit of a typo on our end, was not his first victory of the season. It has been his second overall, but it has been his first here in Kyalami. Up in front, we do know there for what looks to be going on at the moment, Justin Benton and Richard Cecil. It's contact down at turn 13. The 5 rear ends the number 21, joins up now right up alongside Isaac McMillan, who's got the inside into turn 15, trying to go the long distance up over the curbs. Went the number 61, muscles out wide there. Aidan Christie nearly pushes him into the pit lane. That got ugly very, very quickly between the 2 leading semi-pros. The 32 so nearly shoved into the pit lane. Perhaps by accident there by the number 61. I do spy that there could be bad blood between these 2, and we do see that Richard Cecil is adamant to start gaining more positions after having lost out a fair few in that last lap just gone. And that does shift once again the Audi out wide. There's going to be a breaking point very soon that Aiden Christie hits. There is only so many times in these races a man can be shoved to one side before he comes back both arms swinging. I'd hope not swimming in a motor car. That would be, well, that would be drowning. Well, that's the analogy completely ruined. Oh well. Number 32 still in pursuit here. Richard Cecil, though, is adamant to get back up past Isaac McMillan up towards turn 7 at Clubhouse. And things got very, very ugly between himself and Justin Benton there. That rear end on the number 21. And then we saw trying to get back into the mix with some trouble up front for the semi-pros between McMillan and Christie. And it all just got quite pear-shaped from the start. See the sun in its fleeting moments as it sets yonder the horizon. Lights up the 3 leading Malwar racing cars in a deep amber hue as they make their way down through turn 12 in towards turn 13. Up off of 2 wheels between all 3 of those drivers. A fantastic view down at Cheetah Curve, turn 15, now to turn 16 at Ingwe. The number 23 getting closer to the 119, but painfully so when one remembers sandwiched in between 2 Chevys. There's a much statistically higher chance he's going to lose that position for second than he is to gain first anytime soon, because the Mercedes just simply can't cut the mustard on the opening straight. He needs the slipstream. The moment he gets out in front, if he can get out in front, he'll be a sitting duck against both Camaros. Behind them, Brandon David fights on a war of 3 Mercedes, leading up over George Todd and Dylan Vekere. 3 different teams here between the 16, the 161 and the 12. The fight of 4th place. Further down the line in the recent developments surrounding semi-pro, Isaac McMillan leads and continues to do so, almost losing out the lead to Aiden Christie. Right now watches on from afar as Richard Cecil sets his sights on an overtake for 8th place. On the inside, a sunset, a bout of contact there between the 61 and the 5. This could be all the 32 needs heading up towards Clubhouse at turn 7. Aiden Christie still adamant to lead here, looking for his first division win in this series since his debut to Paul Ricard when he was in the AM category back in season 3. In behind them, Fabian Yohure still experiencing connection troubles down through the S's and up towards Le Cop. Worth noting from behind, Vincent Simard, much like Richard Cecil, is looking to carve a line through the crowd. Speaking of carving through the crowd, Clinton Bourne's in 17 for the moment. We had it projected he could see 15th by the end of this race. We're not even halfway through. And he's already eerily close to that goal. 32's out wide at turn 12 to try and avoid contact from behind with the 120. That does leave him a bit high and dry here at Crocodiles, as he does fall right onto the nose there of the car in 3rd in division, that being Ruben Pereira. Side by side, and now contact there between Simard and Christie. And the Australian will be absolutely furious. Constant meddling is what he'll feel it's been from the pro drivers at this time, stepping 1 foot in front of the other, in front of his fight for the race lead in division. Had it not been for either Simard or Yohure or Cecil, he'd have not seen any more grief in his pursuits of the lead of division. As we see there, down through at turn 1 was actually contact there between Yohure and Christie, I believe. Quite a serious toke of desync. Now looking to move to the podium is Ivan Sanchez. We saw from the Spaniard in race 1 was his pursuits of that top 5 and north of that to a podium in the semi-pros. Down through Sunset Curve. We'll catch on with them later. Checking in here with David Tanguay. Fastest lap of any one driver on track at the moment, the number 30. Still stands in 3rd place. 4 attempts in the last interval away from wishful winning. Still looking at his chances to pursue the race lead off of his teammate Christian Lebay. Currently no dice on anything too sporadic between those 3 at this time. We see here from Carl Martel in recent updates from further down the line. He's recently up past Thomas Romano. Now has his sights set on last race's division race winner, the AM category AAA Alpine of Brandon Carr of Breaking Point Racing. The Alpine still on division podium as it would happen here in the AM category. Finds himself a fair distance away as it stands here from either Ray Risty or Didier Potvin, as we do see from the point of view of Clinton Bourne, his sights firmly affixed on the two Astons in front, Brad Peacock and Didier Potvin for that matter. We see actually out wide, was that there? Yes, I believe it was Fabien Uribe. We see, oh, trouble there. That's contact from behind. Bourne versus Peacock, then that collects the 35, turned around. Didier Potvin is in the wall once again. How much more heartbreak can one man take? That has invited in Ray Risty of Team Raceline Sim to possibly move for a first ever lead in category. A damaged number 35 Aston, scorned by that mistake of which was not his own, finds himself within a dangerously close distance to forfeiting that division lead. He doesn't want to be taken off of that top level of the podium once again from external forces way out of his control. He's already, I would say, suffered enough. Looking here, Vincent Simard, closely pursued by McMillan. We see there, side by side, now ahead goes Ruben Pereira into the S's. This is for the semi-pro lead. Ruben Pereira, worth noting, earlier this season has not yet seen a semi-pro win. McMillan has. He saw one in Valencia. This would be a strong series of firsts for Pereira. How much is he willing to risk here down towards turn 12? We'll go to catch on board with those Mercedes cars in just a moment's time here. Looking to go and locate them. The number 8, Ruben Pereira, leads semi-pro down towards Cheetah, up off two wheels there, so nearly turned around. Went Isaac McMillan, behind him Aiden Christie and Ivan Sanchez. That's your top 4 in semi-pro. Looking here from the back end of that top 4, it actually is worth noting very quickly, we do have a yellow flag out. It's for the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp, I believe. Yes, we do see their trouble. It's now collected along with, looks to be, as it stands, the 999 of the Jackal. And also in the mix there looks to be the number 800 of Karina Stinson, though I can't yet discern whether her damage is related to this incident at all. Back in a green flag conditions here with 18 minutes left to go in race 2 at Kyalami. And where we would have thought things would be a little bit more civil on our second go around, now that we've learned the lay of the land, it has been anything but here as the drivers have started to get their claws out. And I imagine heading in towards race 3, we are going to see full-scale warfare between all 3 divisions. We have already seen worlds collide many a time here in today's round. Plenty close for comfort for many drivers already. They've got to settle in and get used to it, because we're far from out of the woods at this time. Heading down through turn 13. Seeing here with a fight going on, 3-way split for 4th. David, Todd and Vekere all in pursuit of one another down through Cheetah Curve. 3 Mercedes cars just outside of that top 3 at the moment. We see going for the inside, it's contact there. The 12 takes out the 16. And that was brazen from the number 12. That's likely to be an imminent investigation on the cards by race control. A bump and go from the number 12 on the number 16 pushes Brandon David down to 6th. Dylan Vekere is right along with him here, looking at a chance of 4th place. Looking back up on towards the podium, David Tanguay in pursuit of wishful winnings, who is in turn in pursuit of Christian LeBay. These 3 very close to one another here as we approach the halfway mark on race 2. Looking back down through the order to see ongoing fighting from the semi-pros. And Ruben Pereira leading here in Kyalami on race 2. The Portuguese talent has yet to see a division win this season. The chances are absolutely there. He has delivered on a phenomenal drive. We saw it was him and Adrian Zavala, the prophesized 2 to be in among the top 10 overall under qualifying predictions earlier in today's session. We've seen when point comes to execute, we do have now one of those semi-pros in the top 10. Of course, it was disaster at the start of today's event for Adrian Zavala. Now way down through the order, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, where is Adrian Tavale? Is he out of this race? No, he's down in 28th place. So that's just the extent of the damage he was subjected to at the very start of race 2 today. Looking up through the order quickly to see recent developments for the fight on 2nd place. David Tanguay versus Wishful Winnings. We mentioned it before that a civil war was brewing among Maloir Racing's confines. It was between the Chevys and the Mercedes cars, the two most dominant figures of this grid. This has been something that has stood the test of time since as far back as Season 2. And that story is only going to continue to get more chapters, I imagine, because of the two most popular choices right now in GT4 racing. It would take a lot to step them out of line. Oh, what's gone on there? We'll be back to you in just